Hey, business owner, have you ever wondered if you could grow your business faster by changing just one thing about yourself? Maybe you could change the way you look, the way you dress, the way you talk. Would these things help you grow your business bigger? Maybe. When I first started working for myself, I had some really strange ideas about the way I should act, the way I should look, even about the way I should dress. And on the whole, I was wrong. Rolling backwards is weird. In today's episode of the Business Amplifier Podcast, we're going to be talking to Julie Kenny from Softly Inspired, and she's going to explain to you how you can grow your business faster by changing nothing about yourself. This is the Business Amplifier Podcast. I'm Andrew Laws. We remove the distortion from your marketing. Let's do it. I've started a brand new business. It's completely new to me. I've never been in business before. And when I watch films about people in business, they wear these really sharp suits and they all talk very officially like that. So I think that's what I'm going to have to do to succeed in business. Julie Kenny, if I really believed that, how much trouble would I be in?
Quite a bit. Because, how are you any different to somebody else who does similar things?
But I see these people in suits everywhere. They must be successful.
Well, there's certainly wearing a suit doesn't stop you being successful.
There you go. There's revelation number one from this episode. You can wear a suit if you want to.
But wearing a suit does not mean you are successful.
No, and indeed, the topic of this podcast, no spoilers here, because if someone's listening to this or watching it, they will have seen the title already. 3 ways you can grow your business by being completely yourself, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit there. So, Julie, we have 3 points to hit. Let's start with point number 1. Do you want to say it, or shall I read it out? It's up to you.
Why don't you read it?
Okay, point number 1, which I just spontaneously happen to know. Point number 1 for growing your business without changing yourself at all is get to know yourself better. Tell me more.
So the thing is that when we go into business, people want to buy from people. There's nothing new in that statement. But when somebody says, "Oh, go and just be yourself," the reality is frequently we're not that attentive to who we are. And when we want to stand out, it's really hard to stand out if you don't understand what makes you special, what makes the way you do things different, what's different about your journey to other people's. And it's really, really common for people to look at somebody else and say, what do I do differently to them, rather than saying, what is it about me? How do I work?
It's one of those things that when you first say it out loud, get to know yourself better, you think, well, obviously I already know myself, but you might not understand how you're perceived by other people, which is something really interesting. I don't think it's something to sort of worry about, but it can be really helpful just to find that out. But I can also see that some people say, they're told, just be yourself. We're like, well, who is that?
Yeah, I think that there's one of the things I find is we often think if we are asked who we are, what we're about, we often talk in terms of other people's expectations of us.
Oh, expectations. Okay, this is interesting.
So if we say, "Oh, well, I'm not good at this," or I'm somebody who talks a lot, it's because other people have told you talk a lot, and their view may not be the worldview. It may not be the people that you're going to be interacting with in business. So we don't necessarily know that our view of that is correct. We may not be focusing on the things that really are special about us. Do we really know what our values are? And when I talk to people about what they should be talking about within their business, which I do quite a bit, I say sit down and think about when was the last time you had a really, really good rant about your business.
Oh, interesting.
Because that really pulls out the things that matter to you, what your values are, what you care about. And it's probably not quite the same as the people who you know who are in similar, or other people who are in similar roles to you. Because you've just had all those other life experiences and expectations and things.
It's your own magical recipe that can't be duplicated, isn't it?
Yeah. So when
So
we say be ourselves, it can be hard.
I think part of the challenge here is as well that as human beings, we have a terrible habit of remembering the negative things that other people say about us. So if I was asked who I am, if I was told to be myself, I'd think, well, I'm probably quite a chatterbox. I'm probably a bit hyperactive. I'm probably overshare, as we did just before I started recording on this thing. I shared something personal, but it was okay. And I jabber. There you go. There was a perfect bit of jabbering. But I don't know I don't know if that's the truth about me. That those things are true. They may well be true, but it's probably not what other people perceive in me.
Yeah,
I hope
there's perception there. But there's another side to this as well, which is not just about how you're perceived, but how you work, how you function well. Because we're talking about how to grow your business better. Then we need to understand what makes us tick, what gets us, what drives us, what the best ways we work. I mean, it's fantastic. People say, "Oh, get up at 5 a.m. and do all this stuff." But if you're a real night owl, that isn't going to work for you. And business takes a lot of energy, and a lot of knockbacks, and you need to manage all that. So if you try and work in a way that doesn't work for you, then you're really, really going to struggle. So getting to know yourself better is about all of that, not just how you perceive, but how you work best, what's going to drive you, what's going to motivate you, and understanding that and get so that you can be more effective, more efficient, and enjoy life more.
Well, that's what we all want, ultimately. So apart from speaking to other people and asking them how they perceive you and how you are, what sort of things can you do in the privacy of your own, in your own little locked castle without anybody else prying? What could you do to get on the first step of the journey to discovering who you are?
I think you need to take time. I would say be attentive, not inventive. So don't sort of think about, what can I say that's different about me? But just sit and notice. So maybe journaling is a really good way to do that.
Okay.
But even if you're not writing things down, just sit and think about those when you are having those rants, when you are feeling really, really motivated, when you are really enjoying a moment. Something is going that way for you, when people are maybe coming to you and saying great things about your business. Maybe a customer said, "Oh, it's really fantastic. This has really changed this for me." And you're sort of like, "Oh, wow." And it just really, boosts you up. Just take a moment to think, I need to remember this. Write those, make a note of those moments, write those down, because at some point later, you just, it was all sort of so-so, and everything was normal. But it wasn't normal in that moment. It was good in that moment. Or it was bad in that moment. And yeah, be attentive.
So I just want to pull at the journaling thread for a minute, because that can mean lots of things to different people. I do a gratitude journal. So every morning I think, what are 3 things that I'm really grateful for? What am I going to do to make today great? And despite the fact I've done it every day for years, I can't remember what the third thing is. So what does journaling mean to you?
To be honest, it can mean a lot of things, because I when I work with people, I find out how journaling works for them. Okay. For myself, I try and every at least once a month, I sit down and make a note of the things that have happened, the things I need to remember. So I actually have a stash of those moments, and I can go back and review those and refresh those. And I sit and I look back and I think, what is that? But also just thinking about your story and telling your story as well. And we'll come back to that later.
Okay, brilliant. So yeah, journaling, it wasn't quite a trick question. I'm just wondering, sort of how you go about it, because I find it really interesting how everyone does it so very differently. You've got people like Churchill, who wrote extensive diaries, which is the same thing. Reams and reams and reams of it. I say do the gratitude journal. Matt, who works here at SEO, he uses something called Obsidian, which is a bit like note taking, where all the notes are linked, and it's called he's building what he calls his second brain. So he's got the very technical thing. I've got the slightly less technical thing, but in reality, just having a pad of paper, I ask some of my clients to do this sometimes. If people have pad of paper by the desk, and when something really positive comes from one of your clients or your customers, just write it down. You haven't got to frame the piece of paper. You haven't got to put it in a vault. But I think just the act of using a pen to put ink on paper somehow does something magical in the brain that really reinforces it.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I haven't settled on one way, so that's the answer in my journaling at the moment.
It's a journey.
But yeah,
brilliant. So,
but the start of the day, what's the intent for the day? I think is that's what I start with.
Absolutely,
the journaling. It's a work in progress,
as is life. We are focused on business here, but this sort of mindfulness, you could almost call it, this awareness of yourself is so linked in my mind to business, because the personality of your business is, especially if you're a small business, is your personality. So number one, that was a great point. Get to know yourself better. So let's move on to number two. You can have this one, Julie.
Yeah.
Hey there, sorry for disrupting the podcast for just a minute, but we've got something special for you. If you go to yeseo.io/audit, we'll give you a free website audit. Could be good, could be useful, could be the turning point for your business. Right, on with the show.
Build a network of people who are aligned with you, which is why we need to do point one, because if we don't know who we are, we don't know who we're going to align with. And what I mean by network is the people who will support you, the people you can learn from, the people you will support, the people you may want to work with, and of course the people who want to buy from you. I mean, that's obvious, but quite often we forget about the first two things. And the most powerful things I've seen have always come from collaborations. So, but without understanding who you are and who your values are, what your values are, and the type of thing that drives you, it's really hard to know who you need to be talking to and who you need to be building those relationships with.
You can't find your tribe if you don't know what they look like.
Exactly.
There's a couple of really neat things you said in that I like. I worry sometimes when people think of network, they think of going to network meetings and standing up and saying, this is why you should buy from me. And for one thing, I think at network meetings, you shouldn't do that. That's just a personal thing. But the network goes so much deeper than that. So as you mentioned support there, and can you unpick that a little bit? So the support part of your network, who might that be?
That is really, quite often it's not going to be other people in business. Sometimes it's your friends and family. But the reality is that a lot of us don't have friends and family who are in businesses or in businesses like ours, and they don't understand what we do. So you need people who get it. You need people who get the highs and the lows, and you can say, like, this has been a really, really rubbish day. This has happened, or I just want to celebrate this win. And you want people who are going to say, I'm listening, or that is, that's amazing. But also people who know the things that you don't know, because we never know enough. And it's finding those people that we want to work with, or that we can take that advice from. We can bounce ideas off, and sometimes it's to a small extent, sometimes it's to a great extent, but it's finding those people who get you. Because if you can be in a room where there's fantastic advice, apart from the fact they're really trying to take your business to a place you don't want it to be. And that really struggles. So, yeah.
I can identify with that very much. There's a networking group that shall remain nameless, although anybody listening to this or anyone who knows me knows exactly what I'm talking about. And it was a room I walked into and I thought, I don't want to be part of this network at all. I'm not in business. I was going to say, I'm not in business to have a big house and a big car, neither of which I have. But as I said it, my brain started tripping off, and I thought, you know what? The people in my network don't either.
Yeah.
So those networks the networks, we call them the marketing bros internally. The marketing, like, whoa, come on, marketing, crush it, smash it, and other aggressive things. They can have their Lamborghinis and stuff if they want. I hope they make them happy, and I mean that. But I don't think anyone in my network's really aiming to do that. And that's what makes it quite a supportive thing. Because if you've got somebody who's a part of your network who is very differently motivated to you, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be incredibly ambitious. It's a magical thing. But if that all they ever talk about is, I went past the Porsche garage again yesterday, had another look at the cars, can't wait to go, it's like, I'd rather talk about something else. It's like gravity. I think these people get drawn to you, but to your point, there's no harm in proactively building that network.
I think you need to, because you don't really, you can be so very, very alone. I think even in a very big company, especially if you're leading that company, you can feel quite alone in that role. So if you have people around who get that, who can talk about things that you want to talk about that have a meaning to you, and even if they're not, I mean, it might be they want the big cars and you don't, but if they understand and get the fact that you don't and they do, it's when that isn't happening. It's when they think, well, this is the way I think, therefore this is the way you should think.
It's that indefinable.
That's where you struggle. And if you don't have that network, it's really, really hard to do the rest. When you've got that network, you've got people who are saying, I know exactly the person you need to talk to. They're recommending you. They're telling other people about you, because they get what you're about, and they get that more and more because you understand what you're about. So when you're talking very much more in that authentic way. We've spoken before about whether this word authentic is getting overused now, but you're talking in an authentic way to them. Therefore, they get you. Therefore, they know that they're recommending the right people to you.
I like it. I like the word authentic. We talked before this when we were planning this episode, and we weren't sure about using it, but it's still such a good word. But I'm with you. I won't dwell on this, but I think it's becoming bound, like words like bespoke, they just don't mean anything. Or homemade. You go past a restaurant, it says homemade food. I don't want homemade food. I've seen the status on my friends' kitchens. I want food made in a professional kitchen. Homemade. Anyway, that's my cross that I shall bear. So number 1 was get to know yourself better. Number 2, build a network of people you're aligned with. Fantastic. So number 3, I'm going to leave this one to you as well, Julie, because I think you have left quite a corker for number 3.
Learn to speak for your business.
Now, the crucial thing, when I first wrote this down, I wrote, learn to talk about your business. Now, for your business is quite a different thing. Could you like to unpack that for us, please?
Yes. So I also started with saying about, and then I thought, no, that's not quite what I mean. It goes back, it's like it belongs to those, this is all part of the same thing. So it goes back to that, finding your authentic self, building that network. How do you build that network? And it's how you talk about what you're doing, why you're doing it, what's driving you. And to talk about those things, you need to know what they are. But you also want to get out and speak, like I'm speaking to you right now. Whether it's going out and networking, whether it is doing that networking pitch, whether you call it, I've heard it elevator pitch, I've heard it's your 60 seconds, all these things. If we just make that a selling point, it sort of falls flat, because if the person you're going to need to buy from you isn't in the room, that's the end of it. It's there, it's gone, it's fallen off the cliff. But if you speak in a way that invites a conversation, you will either have conversations with people who are aligned to you, or you will have people conversations who know people who are aligned to you. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes total sense, and it does.
So when I say about, it's you talk about your business, but you talk around it. You talk in a way that people get it.
It's been a complete revelation to me recently that you will bump into people, especially at networking, who you get a very strong feeling that they are not part of your clan very swiftly. I mean, somebody recently said, shouldn't SEO be dead by now? And my attitude was, oh, probably. Probably. But then they literally turned their back on me and walked away, and I thought, they've made a choice, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But you talked about speaking for your business rather than just boring people about your business, talking about your business too much. And that goes back to the point that we were talking about in the previous number 2, which is I don't think anyone should get up at a networking meeting and just do the hard sell, because that's not why people are going to buy from you. This ever so neatly goes back, Julie, and it's almost like we planned it. This goes right back to point number 1, which is people buy from people. You've got a lovely trifecta of points here. It's very well thought out. I do like this. Right. So if anyone is listening to or watching this episode and they're thinking, right, I have heard the just be yourself thing so many times. Now I think I understand it. What's the one thing you'd like them to remember from this episode?
That you can actually build a business by being yourself, not by being a version of what you think a professional person in your arena is supposed to look like, but is not you at all. Because it's so hard.
That's a wonderful conclusion. When I first started working in the city, in London, in my early 20s, I tried to be that version of what I thought someone who worked in the city should look and act like. And I was uncovered very, very early on, possibly my second day in the job, when the boss took me to the Lloyd's building, and I didn't know the lifts were on the outside. So I got in the lift, like walked all the way to Lloyd's, and was like, trying blah, blah, blah. I'm a grown up now at like 21 or whatever I was. Got in the lift without paying much attention. When the lift shot up, I squealed like a titmouse. It was like immediately the guy, my boss at the time, thought he was like, didn't mock me, but he thought it was funny. And in that nice way, you go, okay, you are laughing out with me. And then he remained a client for 12 years. In fact, he notionally still is now. And that was me being myself, squealing. not kind of
help it in those moments, can you?
Not because I'd gone to M&S and bought a pair of trousers that you had to iron. Anyway, I am going off topic. Thank you ever so much for getting involved in this, Julie. It's been a real pleasure to speak to you, as it always is. And any final thought you'd like to leave people with, or have we kind of wrapped that up?
Do work on your speaking skills. I mean, it's what we're all about, and I think it makes so much difference. But be yourself, but learn to be yourself. Don't think it's going to come easy.
Excellent. And it wouldn't be right to finish this episode without mentioning that Julie and I both know each other through Toastmasters. So if you want to develop your speaking skills and your presentation skills, and indeed your self-confidence, find your local Toastmasters club. There are, Julie can probably tell me how many clubs there are worldwide.
Worldwide, 140,000?
140,000. So if you haven't heard of Toastmasters... That
might be the wrong number, but yeah, I think it's something like that.
World's a big place.
147 countries.
Yes, go have a look at Toastmasters. Absolutely brilliant. Okay, thank you very much, Julie.
Thank you.
So, thanks to Julie for that. That was cool. Let's go back over those 3 points. Point number 1, if you want to grow your business without changing anything about yourself, get to know yourself better. Number 2, sneakily look at a piece of paper. Build a network of people who you're aligned with. Great. Number 3, learn how to speak for your business. What do you think of this episode? It's one of the ones that's not strictly about digital marketing. It's not about SEO. It's not even really about tech at all, but it is very much about business growth, which is what the Business Amplifier Podcast is all about. So please let me know if you want more of this type of content. Personally, I think it was pretty great. And remember, if you want to get better at presenting and talking about your business or just talking in general, check out Toastmasters. I don't get a kickback or anything. It's just been really helpful to me, and that's how I know Julie, who obviously is a very cool human being. So that's it for this episode. Please like, subscribe, and tell your mum.